Hello dear students, welcome to the Odyssey of Virtual Learning. In my previous video, we have discussed leasing, types of leasing, where I had covered operating lease and financial lease. Let us continue with other forms and other types of lease agreements. So we had read what is a lease. A lease is a financial contract between the business customer, user or the lessee, and the equipment supplier, owner or the lessor for using a particular asset, equipment over a period of time against the periodic payment called lease rentals. Now let us carry forward the lease agreement and its types. Sale and lease back. This is another type of lease agreement or arrangement wherein the lessee who already owns the asset sell the same to the lessor and thereafter takes the same asset from him on lease basis. That means here one thing is important to mark, that here the lessee is the owner of the asset. He owns the asset, and after owning the asset, what he does, he sells the same to the lessor. Once lessor becomes the owner, he takes the same asset from him on rent and use it. So this is called sale and lease back arrangement. Sale means lessee was the owner. He made a sale. There's a sale agreement between lessor and the lessee. And after the sale is over, again lessee will take the same asset on lease back from the lessor. So sale and lease back arrangement. Under this arrangement, the lessee immediately recovers the value of his already owned asset from the lessor. Thereafter, the lessee makes payment of the lease rentals periodically as usual. It may be in the form of operating lease or the financial lease. It is one of the convenient methods of leasing which facilitate the financial liquidity of the company. That means the same asset I own and I need money. So what will I do then? I'll sell the asset, but simultaneously I need the asset also. I need money as well as I need the asset also. So what will I do? I will sell the asset to someone, and again from that person I will take it back on lease. Leveraged lease. In case of an ordinary lease, the lessor purchases the asset with an appropriate mix of debt and equity. But the creditor, that is the supplier of the debt fund, does not have recourse to the lessee. Now, here let me make you understand one thing. There may be a situation that lessor owns an asset and gives it on lease to a lessee. But there can be a situation also where lessor purchases the leased asset by taking fund from a creditor. Okay, that means the asset that he owns has been bought by him by taking loan from a creditor. Now here there are three persons involved. One is the creditor who supplies the fund to the lessor who owns the asset and lease it to the lessee. So here what happened, if the lessor fails to make the payment of the loan amount that he had taken from the creditor, then what will be the situation? In under the normal circumstances or under other kinds of lease, if the lessor is not able to pay to the creditor, then the creditor cannot go to lessee and demand for the amount of loan given by the creditor to the lessor. But particularly in this lease arrangement, let us see what happens. In this case, the lessor defaults. If the lessor makes defaults in making the payment, then the creditor can go and he will have recourse. The term is to have recourse to the lessee. So, in other words, in case of lesser defaults in making repayments of the debt, the creditor cannot claim the same from the lessee. He will have recourse to the lesser only. But in case of leverage lease, it is just the opposite of the above. In this case, the creditor remains entitled to have a recourse to the lessee. That means in case the lessor is not able to pay the value of the debt taken by him from the creditor, then the creditor can recover his claim from the lessee. The lease rental is signed to the creditor. The lessee is required to pay the lease rental directly to the creditor of the lessor. Okay, so generally this transaction is undertaken through a trustee. You know what a trustee will do? The trustee will receive the lease rentals and appropriates it as debt service component to the creditor and the balance amount to the lessor. Now let us read domestic lease and international lease. This classification is based on the domicile of the parties to a lease contract. If all the parties, that means the equipment supplier, the lessor, or the lessee are residing in the same country, then we say it is a domestic lease. And if they are residing at a different country, we say it is an international lease. If the lessor and the lessee are domiciled in the same country and the equipment is imported from another country, it is called import lease. And if the lessor and lessee are domiciled in different countries and the lease is called cross border lease. In such case, the equipment supplier may be the resident of any country. Now, normally in these kind of lease or in case of international lease contract, there are some risk attached. The risk is the country risk and the currency risk. Then the most important part of the lease is the lease agreement. After the lease transaction is finalized, lease agreement is prepared and executed by the parties. A lease is an implied or written agreement that specifies the conditions under which the lessor will accept to let out the property to be used by a lessee. This contract allows the lessee to use the property for an agreed length of time, while the owner is assured of consistent payment over the agreed lease period. And the payment that we have already discussed is your lease rentals. The lease agreement incorporates the legal rights and obligations of the lessor and the lessee so as to bind them and serve the purpose of evidence if at all any dispute arises during the lease period. Okay, so let us now discuss what are the main clauses. There can be other clauses also, whatever I am going to discuss now apart from that, but I have highlighted some of the main clauses that are incorporated in the lease agreements. One is the nature of the lease. That means you have to specify on the lease agreement what is the nature of the lease. That means whether it's an operating lease or a financial lease. Okay, what is the nature that you have to, or is a leverage lease, or is a different what is the nature, what are the different types of lease that you have to mention. Then you have to make a description of the asset, that is the model size, specification, what is the manufacturing date, everything you have to specify. Then the duration of the lease period. This clause specifies the period for which the asset will be leased, which is normally called the primary period. Okay, and the clause generally also give an option to the lessee to renew the agreement, and if the agreement is renewed, then the second term is called the secondary period. So both has to be mentioned. Then is a lease rentals. This is the rent paid by the lessee to the lessor. Okay, the quantum of such rentals, the time within which it is payable, the consequences of failures to pay, everything should be specified in the lease agreements. And then comes delivery and redelivery. This clause mentions when and how the leased equipment would be delivered to the lessee and how it will be delivered back to the lessor on the completion of the lease period. Then comes right to use. This clause allows the lessee to make proper and lawful use of the equipment. Then comes repair and maintenance. Usually this clause states that the lessee shall maintain and repair the equipments and keep it in good working conditions. The cost of such maintenance shall be borne by the lessee. Then alterations or additions to the equipments. This clause states that the lessee shall not make any alterations or additions to the equipment or remove it from the premises without the written consent of the lessor. Without the permission or the written consent of the lessee is not required to make any kind of changes to the equipment. Right to inspect. This clause gives the lessor the right to enter the premises of the lessee at any point of time because he wants to inspect the equipment. Then damage to equipment. It is a usual um, if at all any damage occurs to it, then what will be the consequences? So it is usual to stipulate that the lessee will bear all the risks, losses, and damage, theft, or destruction of the equipment as long as it is in his custody. Prohibition of subleasing. This clause prohibits the lessee from subleasing it. That means he has taken the asset from the lessor on lease, and after that, he cannot lease it to someone else. That is strictly prohibited. And default by lessee and the remedies. It is usually written in the lease agreement that if at all the lessee is going to make default in the payment of the lease rentals, then what are the remedies available? It is usual to include a clause indicating the specific events of defaults and remedies. Okay. So normally the remedies may be to declare all unpaid rentals are due and payable immediately and to sue the lessee for the recovery of the same. That means you can sue the lessee to terminate the lease agreement or to seize the equipment given on the lease. So dear students, with this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and in my next video, we'll explore some new area. Thank you, dear students.